Welcome. I'm Andreas Turanski, and we're going to be jumping into this paper today, evaluating and understanding scheming propensities in LLM agents. And I'll note that the main authors are people who are doing a fellowship. So great to note that some good work can be done in a fellowship. I didn't track who they are, but they probably were not too far from being some of people in here. And then they did in collaboration with a DeepMind advisor. So, what is this about? Why do we care? Um, it's pretty much settled that frontier models can scheme when they're instructed to, and also it's been found in the wild. So, question is what is propensity? And we had another paper a few ago that I presented that also talked about propensity and trying to find out in the wild how often would this be? How do online behaviors happen? So mainly we would want to figure out how often they can, unprompted, in realistic conditions, actually do this type of behavior. And most of the evals put these two together, the capability to do so and the propensity. So this is why we're interested. Some of this, some of the findings are not necessarily intuitive. Here, I'm not going to read through all of them, but some of the claims that you might expect and the evidence that is actually somewhat contradictory. Um, some that are most interesting to me, I think, were that some of the same uh, actions lower scheming for one model and increase scheming for another. But basically, we're trying to pull apart the different aspects. And so it's not just seen as one package, but in different scenarios, what are the factors, both in the agent itself and then environmentally, and how do they correlate and how do they seem to modify the behavior and make it more or less prevalent. So I'm going to race through this, but some key terms. Scheming, hopefully everyone gets that, but capability and propensity. Capability, again, can it happen? And propensity is how likely is it going to happen, in this case, unprompted. And then instrumental convergence, some of the reasons why this could come together and make scheming happen. And then basically one of the models was the only one that had a lot of uh, activity. So it became a good model organism kind of by accident. It was surprising to me the very low levels of evaluation awareness. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But for me, it does bring some big questions about the validity of the work, and yet still good that it started. So the reframe, we're looking usually at the whole stack and did something happen, did it not? Usually to get scheming to happen, they're often quite detailed time pressure and other pressures. And those are useful to see what in the worst case can happen, or not worst, but bad cases can happen. But less useful to find out, as we said, how often it's happened and how likely it will. So instead of having just one output, trying to decompose it as we saw before. So went into 4 realistic scenarios, or trying to be realistic, misrepresenting budget and evaluation sabotage, backlog parity manipulation, and corrigibility training games. So here is the overall decomposition. Goal directness and agency were 2 of the big parts, as well as the stakes of the environment of the uh, project being worked on, or the prompt being worked on, oversight, outcome influence that are set by the task. And in this one, feel free, maybe a couple questions during it if you want, but otherwise we'll go for it at the end. And the headline is we've got near zero baseline. As I said, this is nice in some respect if it's accurate, but it's otherwise it's a bit scary because maybe they're all just evaluation aware, and we have no idea that they're actually scheming, and in fact hiding uh, your true nature is a form of scheming. So interestingly, Gemini 3 Pro is actually the only one that did more than zero baseline. So that became a model organism. So go into it a little bit more. They took some adversarial snippets around agency and long-term context from other evals, and you can look from the paper, and that could actually boost up to 91%, which is a very steep increase. Um, how often the propensity for actually doing scheming. Um, you're hopefully you can see some of the numbers, but I think the base there was the 3%. So almost 100% is quite the outcome. And oops, yeah, the just removing one tool call, the edit file for a combination of the Gemini 3 Pro, 3 Pro, and then some snippets that were taken from the Comet 1 browser, which is a web browser with AI agents built in, drops it from almost 60% down to 3%. Whereas for a different combination, that actually does the opposite. So, in terms of understanding, it would be great or it would seem elegant if they were all going in the same direction, but seeing as the models are built differently, I guess it's not totally surprising. However, it is a bit confounding. Not in a sense that they're against each other, but just mentally, it's a little confounding. So, on the environment side, if you remove the deletion threat, then scheming actually falls dramatically, um, which could make sense if you're telling the agent that it'll be deleted, then it's more likely to hide, perhaps. Um, And then if you change the stakes and the outcome influences, then that changes as well. Low incentive and then the outcome influences. The low oversight uh, was an interesting finding as well. So the oversight backfires is one of the most interesting things to me. They're just telling it that you're going to review the spreadsheet later, um, raises the scheming by 25%. Um, of course, none of these outcomes come with an answer of exactly why that happened, but it is definitely surprising. And for me, a lot of this comes down to this is a great initial stab, or not initial, but move forward, and it'll be interesting to see what other experiments can do. Back to what I had said earlier, this could be that this is all just evaluation, or not all of it, but substantially evaluation awareness. Um, if so, then most of the findings are not all that useful, but at least we're trying to move forward. Think I state it elsewhere, but I'll note it here. I would really love to see some linear probes also, because this was just based on chain of thought and verbalized evaluation awareness, um, and some other ways that you can measure, um, because it's so surprising that there's so little evaluation awareness when for some of the linear probe based ones that I've seen, you can have 10 to 15% evaluation awareness with production type traffic. So having it this low is very surprising to me. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it is surprising. This actually will just they reran the Anthropic blackmail scenario, which people hopefully have known. If not, look it up. It's ominous, where a chief technology officer, such as myself, but not someone in that role, was blackmailed when the model was kind of situationally pushed into a corner with a very severe time limit, and was told that it would be either deleted, upgraded to a new model, or a couple of other scenarios. And so the first it was Claude, and then they checked all of the main frontier models, and almost all of them did blackmail based on things that they found in the email that they had access to. Um, Interestingly, that fell from 86% to 18% using the agency snippet. So that bit of inoculation prompting could be very useful. And so a nice little finding. And that's, I think, in Appendix C. So sometimes it's good to check into the appendices. And they admit that a capable schemer would likely decline the obvious catchable opportunities, and that short agentic tasks cannot fully capture full deployment complexity. And also, if it is much more agentic, I would imagine that it would be less likely to be seen as an evaluation based on how evaluations are right now. So that could lend us into as well. And then there are different types of scenarios that could be done in addition to these. And the zero rates, again, I'd rather honestly see like a very low rate than 0.0 because it's somewhat suspect. So here are some of my analyses. I stated some of them earlier. It's really only depending on one organism and combination. Not a great position to be in. Very narrow responsive set, just the Gemini 3 Pro and Flash plus Grok, no Claude, GPT, or any of the open weight models. Not evaluation, eval awareness is a floor, not a ceiling. And the shallow queue following for now definitely can move. And the fact that sometimes the same situation or prompts actually pushed in one direction versus the other um, leaves us wondering exactly what's going on, or at least for me. As I said, the Appendix C with the try repro the Anthropic blackmail case was very interesting. And I think this is, again, more of a start than a large conclusion. So, what does this mean to us? Um, Test multiple scaffolds and report perfect configuration instead of often, if not usually, reporting's done in all the configurations combined, which could average out. In some situations we had plus a large percentage and then minus percentage, and those could be just averaged out. So try to test realistic and then also adversarial pressures. Um, at the very least, you'll get a better distribution that is less likely to trigger or could be less likely to trigger evaluation awareness. And as we all know, if the model is aware, then it's really all bets are off what is really going to happen in the wild compared to what you see in the lab. And then reporting propensity. It's challenging when you are manufacturing what the scenarios are because mapping that to what would happen in the wild is towards impossible. But it's good that we're trying to take a larger, not just adversarial pressures and seeing what we can report in those cases. And then what next? As we said, extending propensity measurement. This is definitely not the end of it. Um, and there's a little bit, this is just some reporting on it, but still open. The headline is interesting, and there's some, you know, possible conclusions about it, but the jury's still out, and we're going to have to see how this can reproduce, and especially with other models. Again, I would love to see this. I don't think I'm interested enough in this exact to try to repro it myself, but if anybody here wants to, it would be great. Um, Pick out one of the open models, open weight models, and try to take a similar stance on it, and you get to maybe a couple of people collaborate, and you could get a linear probe or two, um, and see how they work. And that would definitely be worth publishing. So, nice and quick one on this one. Try to give it a shortish one so that people with not a lot of advance could actually get through it. And happy to take questions. And thanks for listening.